The central table was covered. Someone to investigate. So we have 5 days for certain, Tenil calculated. Maybe a week if we're lucky. That's not enough. We can extend it. Asher said, that strange smile appearing. Forgery. We send a message in Horvath's name. Say he had to travel urgently, business opportunity in the south. Operation expansion. Something plausible. And that he'll make the payment when he returns in, say, 3 weeks. Would Kasimir buy that? Estella asked, skeptical. If the message is convincing enough. Asher picked up one of the letters Horvath had written, studying the handwriting. I can imitate this perfectly. And if we use the right paper, correct seal, appropriate messenger. Yes, Kasimir might buy it, at least for a few weeks. And when those weeks pass? Cornelius questioned. When Horvath doesn't return and Kasimir investigates for real. By then, Tenil said, voice firm, we'll have already taken over the operation completely, redistributed stock, identified all the addicts and offered treatment. And most importantly, cut off supply in a way that looks like Horvath's failure, not deliberate theft. He struck the table. Kasimir will discover he lost the operation. But he won't immediately know it was us. He'll think Horvath simply failed, fled cowardly before facing consequences. Which is true, Estella observed with a dry smile. Exactly, Tenil agreed. We use truth to hide greater truth. Horvath fled. But not from incompetence, from fear of us. Kasimir doesn't need to know that part yet. So the strategy is, Asher began, noting, 1. I create a false message from Horvath. Send it through a neutral messenger tomorrow. 2. We start taking over the operation immediately. Malric identifies all the distributors. Raya and Estella make persuasive visits. 3. We identify all addicts through sales records. Illyria works with her contacts in healing temples to prepare treatment. 4. We cut off supply gradually over the next 2 weeks. Looks like supply chain failure, not sabotage. He looked up, and when Kasimir finally investigates, he finds an operation already collapsed. Horvath disappeared, and no obvious trace of our interference. Perfect, Tenil approved. Starts tomorrow. But there's one more thing. He pulled out a specific set of documents, transport route records. Horvath used certain routes through the mountains to move product. Illegal routes, avoiding taxes. He paused significantly. Some of these routes are the same ones being used by merchants who recently made a deal with certain people. Slow understanding crossed the others' faces. Cornelius smiled. Asher tilted his head with renewed interest. Estella crossed her arms, but there was admiration in her eyes. "You're using information you gained as Lord Vorten to benefit Fenrir," Cornelius said. "Risky. If anyone connects, no one will." Tenil cut in, "Okay? Because I'm going to offer protection for these routes through Fenrir. Mercenaries to ensure security. The merchants are happy because they have real protection. We gain influence over illegal trade. And as a bonus," he smiled coldly, "some of these routes were also used by Kasimir. Taking control, we cut off another of his income streams, doubling the benefit of unique information." Asher murmured, making notes frantically. "Efficient, but requires careful coordination. How do you explain to the Fangs that you know about these routes?" "Reliable informant," Tenil said simply. "I don't need to name the source. Just say we have information about unprotected routes we can exploit." Malric has already established a reputation for having contacts everywhere. No one will question it. Lie built on truth, Cornelius observed. "You're getting very good at this." There was a warning beneath the compliment. Tenil heard it, but chose to ignore it for now, so it's decided. He said, "Tomorrow we expand on 3 fronts. Take over Horvath's operation, offer protection for illegal routes, and keep Kasimir in the dark as long as possible. Cornelius, you coordinate with Malric on identifying distributors. Estella, you and Raya prepare persuasion teams. Sure. You handle the forgery and start tracking addicts, and you," Estella asked. Tenil sighed. "Need to be Lord Vorten for a few days, maintain appearances. Deal with noble matters I've been neglecting. My mother is starting to ask questions about how many evening meetings I have." He paused. "But I'll be available if you need me. Always." The complete pack was assembled again, all 7 around the table. The wolf in his usual position, disguise complete, cane resting against the table. The Fangs didn't notice that the man under the mask was exhausted from a sleepless night, that he'd spent hours dissecting documents before finally returning to the mansion at 4 in the morning. The performance never stopped. "We have a new opportunity," the wolf began without preamble. "A reliable informant passed us information about illegal trade routes through the mountains. Routes used by merchants to avoid heavy taxes on the main roads." He gestured to the map that Hadi had prepared, showing 3 main routes highlighted in red. Currently unprotected, vulnerable to bandits' weather, and most importantly, vulnerable to our influence. Raya leaned forward, studying the map with a warrior's interest. "You want us to take control of the routes? Toll collection or something like that?" "No." The wolf shook his head. "We want to offer protection. Mercenaries to guard caravans, sure safety in exchange for a reasonable fee." He paused, "but not protection as extortion. Real protection. We keep bandits away, keep merchandise safe, build a reputation that routes protected by Fenrir's hounds are safer than official routes. That requires resources." Malric observed, "Always practical. Mercenaries cost, and we need many if we're going to cover 3 routes simultaneously." "We already have resources," Hadi responded, pointing to a pile of sacks at the edge of the room, "the funds stolen from Horvath. The operation we took over from Horvath gave us considerable liquidity. We can hire initially. And when reputation is established, protection fees pay for themselves, and their strategic benefit." The wolf continued. "These routes were partially used by Kasimir too. Taking control, we cut off another of his income streams. He loses not just Horvath's operation, but access to routes that facilitated illegal movement of other goods." He tapped his cane lightly, to blows with one action. "Clever." Skull said, obvious approval in her voice. "Who executes?" "The blade and you." The wolf looked at Raya, then Estella. "Will coordinate security. Recruit reliable mercenaries. Establish posts at strategic points. The hunter, he turned to Malric, identifies merchants using these routes. Makes initial contact, offers services, and if they refuse. Raya asked, "They won't." The wolf said with certainty, "Because the offer is genuinely good. Real protection for a fair price." But if some idiot refuses, he let the sentence hang. The hunter can mention that unprotected routes have a tendency to become dangerous. Bandits appear. Accidents happen. He smiled behind the scarf. But with our protection, everything flows smoothly. Real protection with the edge of implicit threat. Cornelius murmured, smoking. Classic. It works because it's true, Hadi added. We really will protect. It's not a bluff, but merchants who refuse may find that other organizations, less ethical, have heard about their routes, and those organizations aren't as gentle as we are. It was a clever game. Offer something real, but structure it so that refusal was more dangerous than acceptance. When do we start? Raya asked, already clearly excited at the prospect of action. Today, the wolf replied. The blade, skull, begin mercenary recruitment. Use contacts at the docks. Look for veterans, not just muscle. We need professionals. The hunter, make a list of priority merchants. We start with the biggest, those who move the most volume. And the seer, he looked at Illyria. Do you see anything? Any warnings about these routes? Illyria was quiet, silver eyes distant. For a long moment, she didn't respond, just staring through mists only she could see. Finally, I see opportunity, growth, but also jealousy. There are others who want these routes, who will feel it when we take them. She focused on the wolf. Beware of the Black Port gang. They control minor smuggling in the area. They'll see our expansion as an invasion. Then we negotiate, the wolf said, or absorb. As we've done with others, offer first, threaten second. Destroy only if necessary, and if they choose destruction. Raya asked, hand unconsciously going to her sword. Then the blade will have interesting work. The wolf replied, but I prefer to avoid it. Violence attracts attention, and attention is the last thing we want while consolidating gains from Horvath. Agreement around the table. The plan was clear. Execution would begin immediately. One last thing, the wolf said. The information about these routes came from a reliable source, but a source that needs to remain anonymous. So if anyone asks how we knew, he looked specifically at Raya and Malric. Say the hunter's informant network identified it. Nothing more. Understood. Understood. Malric confirmed and Raya nodded too. Tenil relaxed internally. Lie accepted. Connection between Lord Vorten and the wolf remained hidden. Then go. Begin, the wolf ordered. And remember, we're not a gang. We're an organization. Professional, efficient. Our reputation is our strongest weapon. Protect it as you would protect your lives. The pack dispersed, each to their tasks, and the wolf stood alone for a moment, looking at the map, seeing the empire in shadows grow, piece by piece, route by route, until Kasimir was surrounded by enemies he never saw coming. The intelligence room was a smaller space annexed to the main warehouse walls covered with maps. Boards with names connected by lines of red ink tracking connections, stacks of reports organized by date and relevance. It was Hadi and the hunter's domain, where information was dissected and transformed into action. The wolf was there with them now, along with Skull and the Raven. Only the core, because what they would discuss was too sensitive for the fangs yet. So Tenil said, removing his hat now that they could speak freely. The hunter that Illyria predicted. What did we find out? Malric stood near a specific board where he'd pasted fragmented information. Mormont reports, street rumors, whispered mentions in taverns. He pointed to the central name, the Hound. That's the code name, Malric explained. rewards for information about us. 100,000 for the wolf, 50,000 for any other member. Rewards like that attract attention, and the hound works for money. He gestured to the board. If Kasimir hired him, and I believe he did, then we have a serious problem, because the hound doesn't stop. And eventually, he'll find a clue. Someone who saw something, someone who'll talk. So, what do we do? Estella asked, voice tense. Wait for him to find us. No. Tenel said firmly. We prepare. We assume he's hunting. And we plan damage mitigation. He looked around. First, no one operates alone anymore. Always in pairs, minimum. If the hound attacks, there's a witness and backup. Second, everyone carries an emergency signal. He pulled out a small silver whistle. 3 sharp blasts. If anyone is in danger, signal. The rest converge immediately. Third, Asher added, escape routes. Everyone memorizes 3 different routes from any operational location to safe points. If pursued, don't come straight to base. Lead pursuer in circles. Lose the trail, only then return. Fourth, Cornelius said, evidence destruction. If someone is captured and we need to consider the possibility there is nothing linking back to base or other members. No personal documents. No name lists. Memorize everything important. And fifth, Tenel said, voice lowering. If someone is captured and tortured, there's a limit to information they can give. Code names only. Never real identities. Never the location of this base. He paused, hating the next words, but knowing they were necessary. And if torture is inevitable, there's a final option. He placed a small vial on the table. Clear liquid inside, almost looking like water. But everyone recognized it by the subtle smell when Tenel briefly opened it, fast-acting poison. No, Estella said immediately. We're not going there. I hope not, Tenel agreed. But it needs to be available, 'cause the hound isn't just an assassin. According to rumors, he's an interrogator too. And if he catches one of us, he'll torture until he gets everything. Every name. Every location. Everything. He closed the vial. This is a last resort. Only if capture is absolutely certain and escape impossible. But it needs to be an option. No one spoke for a long moment. The weight of it being prepared for death, for suicide if necessary, was too heavy. There's a 6th option, Asher said finally. We find him first. Turn the hunt around. Identify the hound before he identifies us, and neutralize him. How? Malric asked. He's a ghost. No one knows how to find him. Everyone can be found, Asher replied. Just a matter of the right bait. And we have perfect bait. Kasimir's reward. He tilted his head. We create a false informant. Someone who claims to have seen Fenria members. Let the hound come investigate. And when he comes, ambush. Risky, Cornelius observed. If it fails, we reveal that we know about him, and he becomes more careful. But if it works, Estella said, seeing the plan, we eliminate the bigger threat before it materializes. Tenel considered it was risky, but also proactive. And he preferred to attack than wait. Develop the plan, he decided, but cautiously, and only execute if we're certain it can work. We won't sacrifice a member on a risky bet. Understood. Asher nodded, already making notes. Meanwhile, all security protocols active immediately, Tenel ordered. And keep the Fangs informed about general precautions, but not about Do you trust him? Lady Morell asked, and there was genuine concern. He has a reputation for being opportunistic. I don't trust anyone but you, Tenel replied honestly, standing and adjusting his vest. But I'm curious, okay? And curiosity sometimes reveals opportunities. 5 minutes later, Tenel entered the reception room with the perfect posture of Lord Vorten, confident, controlled, slightly haughty, performing the role society expected. Lord Matthias Crane stood near the window, observing the gardens. He was a man of 50 years, gray hair perfectly combed, well-trimmed mustache, wearing an expensive but not extravagant suit. The posture of someone trying to appear more important than he was. When Tenel entered, Crane turned, a forced but polite smile appearing. Lord Vorten. He approached, extending his hand. Thank you for receiving me without notice. I know it's discourteous, but circumstances sometimes demand speed. Lord Crane. Tenel shook his hand firmly. Please, sit. May I offer tea? Wine. Tea would be wonderful. Crane sat, but there was tension in his movements. Poorly hidden nervousness. A servant brought tea, served both, and left discreetly. Tenel drank calmly, waiting. Letting the other speak first always revealed more. Finally, Crane set his cup aside and leaned forward. Lord Vorten, I'll be direct because I respect your time. He paused. I'm here because I believe we can mutually benefit each other, and because I'm concerned about the directions certain forces at court are taking. Forces. Tenel raised an eyebrow. You'll need to be more specific. Crane hesitated. Then Lord Kasimir. Tenel kept his face perfectly neutral, but internally, maximum alert. What about him? He's weakening. Crane said quietly, looking around as if someone might be listening, even in a private room. In recent months, there have been incidents. His operations failing, allies disappearing, and most recently, considerable financial losses. He drank tea nervously. Rumors say there's an organization in the shadows working against him. I don't know if it's true, but something is happening. And those of us who have connections with Kasimir, we're worried. Connections? Tenel repeated, voice carefully casual. You work for Kasimir. Not directly. Crane corrected quickly. But my mines supply copper for his operations, and he pays well. Very well. Better than the official market. He paused. But if he falls, if he loses power, all of us who depend on him fall too. Now it became clear. Crane was a rat trying to leave a sinking ship. And you're here because? Tenel let the question hang. Because you're growing. Crane said, and there was genuine admiration beneath the nervousness. House Vorten was almost destroyed after the tragedy with your father. But in 2 years, you rebuilt. Not just rebuilt, new business partnerships, growing influence, reputation for competence, and he searched for the word determination. He leaned even closer. I see an opportunity. Aligning myself with a rising force instead of betting on a declining one. You want to trade Kasimir for me? Tenel said directly. Yes, Crane admitted without shame. And I know it sounds opportunistic, because it is, but it's also pragmatic and honest. I'm not coming with false loyalty or fake friendship. I'm coming with a real business proposal. My mines supply copper for you. Better prices than Kasimir paid in exchange for protection and partnership. Your name protects me from retaliation. When Kasimir discovers I jumped from his ship. Tenel studied him. There was brutal honesty there. Crane wasn't pretending to be anything other than what he was, an opportunist trying to survive. But also, there was utility. Crane had information about Kasimir's operations, had access to other minor nobles who would also be thinking about jumping, and had resources that Fenrir could use. And if I refuse, Tenel asked, then I look for someone else. Crane replied, but I prefer you. Because I've seen how you operate. Careful, intelligent. not impulsive like some young lords. He paused. And because I suspect you hate Kasimir as much as you have reason to hate him. Your father and brother. I was at court when it happened, and I saw the look on your face at the funeral. He lowered his voice. You want revenge. And a man seeking revenge is a man who understands the value of allies. Silence Tenil processed. Part of him wanted to refuse. He didn't need opportunistic allies. But the strategic part, the part that had learned from Cornelius and Asher, saw potential. I'll consider your proposal, Tenil said finally. But I need details. How much copper do your mines produce? What other connections do you have with Kasimir? And most importantly, he fixed Crane with a penetrating look. Are you willing to provide information about his operations? Not just end the partnership, but actively help against him. Crane swallowed hard, sweat appearing on his forehead. This was crossing a line, from opportunism to active betrayal. But then he nodded. Yes, I'll do what's necessary, because Kasimir is sinking, and I won't drown with him. Then leave your contact information with my secretary. Tenil said, standing a sign that the meeting was over. I'll review everything. And if I decide the partnership is mutually beneficial, I'll contact you within a week. Crane stood too, clearly relieved not to have been immediately rejected. Thank you, Lord Vorten. Sincerely, you won't regret this. He hesitated at the door. And just one more thing. There are others like me, minor nobles, who are thinking of leaving. If you accept my proposal, if you show there's a viable alternative, others will come too. You can build an entire network of Kasimir's former allies. And that? He smiled nervously. That would weaken him more than any direct attack. When Crane finally left, Tenil remained in the reception room, processing. Kasimir was bleeding. And his own allies were looking for exits. This was a massive opportunity. Not just destroy Kasimir through Fenrir in the shadows, but isolate him politically as Lord Vorten in the public light. Attack from both sides simultaneously. Wolf and noble working in perfect coordination. Dangerous, risky, and potentially devastating for Kasimir. Tenil smiled, small and cold. The chess game was moving on multiple fronts now. And Kasimir, for the first time, was truly on the defensive. The game was getting interesting. A week had passed since Lord Matthias Crane's unexpected visit. A week of meticulous investigation. Discussions with Asher disguised as consultations with his personal secretary, and careful analysis of every angle. Tenil was in his study, but not alone. Asher was there too, not in Hadi's operational clothing, but dressed as an efficient administrative assistant, simple suit, glasses hiding heterochromatic eyes, hair pulled back in a professional bun. To any servant who entered, it was just Lord Vorten and his secretary discussing business. Nothing more. The hunter delivered the final report this morning, Asher said, placing a thick folder on the desk. Complete investigation on Lord Matthias Crane. And it's interesting. Tenil opened the folder, beginning to read. Malric's meticulous handwriting covered dozens of pages, every movement catalogued, every financial transaction mapped. Summary, Tenil asked, continuing to flip through, but wanting Asher's perspective too. Crane is desperate, but honest in his desperation. Asher replied, adjusting his glasses. He really is fleeing from Kasimir. In the last 3 months, he's made contact with 7 other minor nobles, all with similar connections to Kasimir, all expressing concerns about instability. Do they know about us? About Fenrir? Not specifically. But they know something is happening. Kasimir's operations failing. Allies disappearing. Money bleeding. Asher leaned forward. And like rats on a sinking ship, they're looking for exits. Crane is trying to organize a collective exodus. Strength in numbers. Names. Tenil asked, reaching the page where Malric had listed the 7 nobles. Asher picked up a separate paper with summaries. Lord Victor Thang controls fishing fleets in the south. Provides transport for Kasimir's smuggling operations. 38 years old. Old family, but impoverished. Lady Serafina, Vex the only woman. 42 years old. Widow, controls illegal gambling houses in 3 cities. Kasimir receives 15% of the profits. Lord Edmund Corsilver, mines in the West. Launders money through false ore sales. 50 years old, conservative, nervous. Lord and Lady Ashford a couple. Vineyards and wine export. Use bottles to smuggle messages and small valuable objects. Both in their 30s. Lord Dorian Gray, real name, ironically, is 29 years old. Young, controls response today. Accept the principle of partnership. Suggest formal meeting next week to discuss specific terms. And what about the other 7? Asher asked. I tell Crane I'm open to meeting them, individually, when he feels they're ready. Tenel wrote as he spoke. But I make it clear, I'm not building a conspiracy against Kasimir. I'm offering a legitimate business alternative. If they want to leave illegal arrangements, I facilitate the transition. But I'm not recruiting an army. Beautiful lie, Asher observed with a smile. Not completely a lie, Tenel corrected. As Lord Vorten, I really am offering legitimate business partnerships. The fact that it weakens Kasimir is a convenient side effect. He finished the letter, sealed it with wax and the Vorten crest. And truth protects better than lies. If Kasimir investigates, he'll find exactly what I described. Normal business transactions. While Fenrir operates in the shadows, doing the real dirty work. Asher completed. 2 sides of the same coin. Brilliant. Tenel called a servant, handed over the letter. Take this to Lord Matthias Crane. Personally, wait for a response if he wishes to send one. The servant bowed and left. Tenel turned to Asher. How long until Kasimir realizes what's happening? If we're careful, months, Asher estimated. He'll see minor nobles ending partnerships, but that happens normally. People leave businesses. What do you woe on see? Because we LL hide, it is that everyone is leaving at the same time and going to the same place. To you? And when he finally realizes, it'll be too late. Asher said with cold satisfaction, they'll be isolated. Without minor allies, without support infrastructure. And then Fenrir closes the noose, from outside and inside simultaneously. Tenel allowed himself a small smile. Check Kasimir, he murmured. move goods legitimately without Kasimir scrutiny. Serafina Vex has information secrets collected in her gambling houses. The Ashfords have connections abroad. Dorian Gray has social influence that can be useful. Brennan has military experience and contacts with veterans. He paused. Alone, we're small. But united under someone Kasimir doesn't control, we can be a real force. And why me? Tenil asked. Why not unite directly? Why do you need me as what leader? Because you have legitimacy we don't have, Crane said frankly. House Vorten is old, respected. You suffered public tragedy and rebuilt with dignity. Society sympathizes with you. He paused. And most importantly, you're not connected to Kasimir. Never were. Your father refused his offer years ago, and we all know how that ended. His voice dropped lower. You have reason to hate him, and the enemy of our enemy is a potential ally. Tenil studied Crane. The man was a coward and opportunist, but also honest about being a coward and opportunist. And that had value. If I agree to form this network, what are the expectations? You simply end business with Kasimir and start with me. Gradually, Crane said. We can't all leave simultaneously. That would alert Kasimir immediately. So we do it over 6 months, maybe a year. One by one, we find legitimate reasons to end partnerships with him. Better opportunities, business direction changes, anything plausible. He gestured. And meanwhile, we start partnerships with you. Also gradually. No one notices a pattern until it's too late. And when Kasimir finds out, Tenil asked, because he will eventually. And when he does, he'll retaliate. That's why we need you, Crane said urgently. Alone, we're vulnerable. But under protection of an old and respected house, Kasimir needs to be more careful. Attacking a minor noble is easy. Attacking an ally of House Vorten, that calls court attention. Investigations, scrutiny he doesn't want. It was solid logic and aligned perfectly with what Tenil was already planning. All right, Tenil decided. Here's what I propose. You're first. We test the partnership for 2 months. If it works well, you bring Victor Thane. We integrate him. 2 more months, another, and so on. But he fixed Crane with a penetrating look. Any betrayal, any sign that someone is informing Kasimir, and the entire partnership ends immediately, and it doesn't just end. Make sure Kasimir knows exactly who is betraying him. Understood? Crane paled, but nodded. Understood. Absolute loyalty. Or mutually assured destruction. Exactly. Tenil extended his hand. So we have an agreement. Send the first copper shipment next week. We'll discuss price based on current market. And start compiling information about Kasimir's operations that you know about. Everything. Don't hide anything from fear of appearing guilty. Past is past. What matters is the future. Crane shook his hand firmly, obvious relief. Thank you, Lord Vorten. You won't regret this. I know, Tenil said with cold confidence, because I've ensured that regret is impossible for both sides. When Crane left, Tenil remained seated, finishing his tea calmly. Another piece on the board, another front opened against Kasimir. And the best part? All perfectly legal. Documented business partnerships. Nothing that could be traced to Fenrir. Wolf and Lord working in perfect harmony. For now, at least. Dinner was almost finished when Lady Morel finally touched on the subject she'd clearly been considering all evening. Tenil had noticed she always had that look when something weighed on her mind, that way of moving food around without really eating. Tenil, dear, she began, placing her fork aside. I received an invitation today for a ball at House Thornwell next month. Tenil replied, not looking up from his own plate. Thornwell always gives balls. It's practically their hobby. This one is special. Lady Morel continued, voice careful. A ball for young singles. Specifically, she paused. And you were mentioned in the invitation. Personally, Tenil stopped eating, raising his eyes to meet hers. There was something in her expression, maternal determination mixed with something softer. Mother, let me finish. She raised her hand gently. I know you're busy. I know rebuilding the house consumes your time, and I know that. She paused, choosing words. I know that since your father and Dravik's deaths, you've focused exclusively on responsibilities. On business, on proving you can lead our house adequately, and I can. Tenil said, defensive. You've seen the reports. Our finances are better than they've been in years. New partnerships formed. Respect rebuilt, I've seen. And I'm proud. Lady Morel interrupted, voice carrying genuine warmth. Prouder than I can express. You've become a man your father would have admired deeply. She paused. But I also see a son who doesn't smile anymore, who works to exhaustion, who carries a weight no 25-year-old should carry alone. Tenil looked away, obvious discomfort. I manage, I know. She said softly, but managing isn't the same as living. And while I understand dedication, I also worry about you, about the house's future, about, she hesitated, about what happens when I'm no longer here and you're completely alone. Mother, don't talk like that. Tenil, she said firmly, I'm 47 years old. I'm not old, but I'm not young anymore either. And as matriarch of this house, it's my responsibility to think about continuity, about heirs, about, she gestured vaguely, about ensuring that everything your father built, everything you've rebuilt, doesn't end with you. Heavy silence fell. Tenil knew where this was going, the conversation they'd been avoiding for 2 years. You want me to marry? He said, directly. I want you to consider the possibility. Lady Morel corrected. Not immediately. Not forced. But consider. She leaned forward. You've received 60 marriage proposals in the last year. Tenil, 60 noble families wanting to marry their daughters to you. And you've refused all without even considering. Because I'm not ready. And I understand that, she said, voice softening. I truly understand. You've suffered terrible loss. You're rebuilding not just the house, but yourself. And I want you to make an appearance, Lady Morel corrected. Not to desperately search for a wife. Not to promise anything to anyone. But to. She searched for words. to remind society that you exist beyond papers and business, to show that House Vorten isn't closed in eternal mourning. And maybe, she smiled slightly, maybe for you to remember what it's like to simply talk with someone without a business agenda. Talk, Tenil repeated. Yes, dance, laugh. If you can remember how. She reached across the table, taking his hand. Tenil, I'm not asking you to marry tomorrow. I'm not even saying you need to seriously consider marriage yet. But go to the ball, meet people, make friends, if nothing else. Because isolation. Her voice trembled slightly. Isolation. When everything was simple. 2 lives, 2 identities. And every day, it became harder to remember where one ended and the other began. But maybe at a ball, surrounded by social masks and noble performances, he could find a moment of honesty, of humanity. Or maybe it would just prove, once again, how irrevocably broken he'd become. Only a month would tell. And so, another chapter of our saga concludes. But the tapestry of time still holds many plots to be unveiled. To not miss the unfolding of upcoming events and continue the journey with us, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Leave your like so more listeners discover our tales and share this story with those who also yearn for new legends. What was your favorite moment from this narrative? Leave your comment below and prepare for the next chapter that will soon echo here.